Hello, everyone. We've already had a little banter back and forth, and just when you see someone's face you haven't seen for a little while, it's kind of fun to find out what people are doing, what they have been doing. But welcome back, Denise, since you've been in Topeka now for a few months, as you said. I wish we could have welcomed you a little more formally to the campus and walked around the campus and see students. I'm looking out my window here in Morgan Hall, and the thing that is very difficult, maybe just where I am, I don't see a single person walking around the campus, looking east and looking into the parking lots. But we have tackled this pandemic head on, and we began this semester the previous on the time that the previous plans had been made for this just to be a normal semester. We have changed the ending of the semester a bit. Students, when they go home for Thanksgiving, they'll come back. They won't come back to the campus physically. Then we'll have a little finals program for them before they end the semester this fall. And we wanted to have as much as we could that was what we kept hearing from many students. Now it depends. Sometimes it depends on the students, but what we kept hearing, particularly from the ones that were entering college, while they're just out of high school or not far out of high school, and they still want face-to-face contact. And so we have about 60, maybe more than 60, maybe 65 or so percent of all of our classes. And Dean, you can share a little bit of this as well, but of all of our classes are face-to-face. It's what the students have told us they want. And we have about 20% or so that we've been doing asynchronous education for some time, particularly in the allied health fields and nursing and a few others. And the rest of it is just doing the normal classes, but doing it in remote style. And so far that's worked. We have not had the cataclysmic problems of infections of the disease. In fact, we've only and people, we don't get them from the sidewalk as they're walking down beside the campus, but of those people who have contacted us, and most of the students, even if they live in the surrounding area, they let us know what their health situation is. And we've only had about 32 or 33 positive test results from about July. Well, that's a very small number when you take into consideration that we have about 8,000 people, including the university campus, the tech campus, and then faculty and staff. To have that many people that can have a problem when we've only had about 30, 32 folks that have that problem. So we feel blessed with that we have had a lot of discussions about how to make things work better in this environment. So we're happy to have the opportunity here to bring people back in and think about the situation, think about the Wake Up with Washburn program. I get to see some faces that you hadn't seen for a while. And it's a delight to have you back here on campus. Come back when we have more people walking around outside. It'll feel like a real campus again. So with that, I will turn it back to, do I go back to David, I think? Okay, yes, David.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. We are once again pleased to be able to sponsor Wake Up with Washburn with the Washburn Alumni Association. It might be a little cheaper this year if we're not feeding everyone eggs and sausages and all that good stuff, but it is what it is. I've got this expression I've been using since March, and that is, when you get lemons, you got to make lemonade. And we've made a lot of good lemonade at Washburn in the last a few months, and we'll keep doing it. I'm so impressed with our faculty and their ability to, if you think back in March, they had to change everything they did on the fly. and they succeeded. In fact, if you go back and look at our teaching evaluations for the spring, they're a little bit higher than they were for the fall for last year. And so I'm not sure what that says exactly, but it was good news, and we didn't have many complaints. School, so we're continuing to do great things at Washburn, the School of Business. We've changed how we're having to do it. We're going to have our pitch competition, our elevator pitch competition again this fall. It's going to be virtual as opposed to, getting all the judges and all the students in the room to do that. So we just have to adjust as we go through, and the faculty are doing a great job, and the students are doing a great job. Now I have a little secret I can share with you today, but you can't tell anyone. Years ago, we achieved accreditation by AACSB International. It's the premier accreditation body in the world. Probably the only top 6 or 7% of the schools in the entire world have achieved that accreditation. And we first achieved it in 2006. And every 5 years, we have to go through a review process, and we write a report, and the team comes to campus and pokes around a little bit and make sure that what we say in the report is true. They meet many, many different folks, and then they give a recommendation. Well, they left yesterday morning. When I mean leave, we turned off the Zoom meetings because the team didn't come this year. We did it all virtually Monday and Tuesday, and they met with many, many different groups. The little secret is, and I can't say it out loud, so I'll give you one of those. Okay, we're okay. Actually, a formal announcement can't occur until a couple other approval processes go in place, but I think I can do that and maybe not get in trouble with AACSB. So we're very.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Okay.
David's absolutely right. It is the faculty, it is his leadership, it is his involvement of the community, it's the students that we have that really create the environment so that we can be among the elite in the world with this accreditation from AACSB International. And so we're really proud of what you've done, David, and what the faculty have been doing. I thought I saw Bill Roach here a few minutes ago, emeritus, and I see Jim Martin back here. But it was an outstanding report that we received from them. Thank you, David.
Well, thank you, Dr. Farley, and thanks to you and the administration and the regents for supporting what we do, because we couldn't do it without your support. So anyway, so that's my good news, my little secret. Don't tell anyone, but we're very proud of that. And we're all a little relieved today as well, because that's a momentous thing we do every 5 years. All right. Well, what do you say about Denise? Well, I can tell you that Denise earned her Bachelor of Business Administration degree in 1994. She went down to Tulsa, University of Tulsa, and got a master's in tax. And she's completed the Tuck Global Leadership Program at Dartmouth. She is a CPA. She worked in public accounting for nearly 10 years, taxes. She likes taxes. In 1999, she became the tax manager of Hill's Pet Nutrition. And over the next 15 years working at Hill's, she worked in a variety of roles until she was the global tax director for Hill's. She and her tax team delivered more than $1 billion in direct and indirect tax savings to the company. That's quite an accomplishment. Of course, during her tenure, Hill's became part of Colgate-Palmolive. In 2015, Denise returned to her home country of Brazil and became Colgate Brazil's assistant controller, where she was responsible for the company's financial controls and reporting activities. And then after 2 decades of service to Colgate in Latin America and in Hill, she retired from Colgate in June 2019. Well, you can't retire, Denise. Denise will probably never retire. So she's now vice president of global tax for Revlon, a company that many people know lots about. Denise was a 2003 member of the Leadership Kansas class. It wasn't the best class. I was in the best class, but in any case, It was a good class. She was honored in 2005 as the YWCA Woman of Excellence and was the recipient of the Hispanic Corporate Achievement Award. And she was the first alumna honoree of our Beta Gamma Sigma Business Honor Society here at Washburn University. She's been a member of Topeka South Rotary, Kansas chapter of American Red Cross, served on the Topeka Community Foundation's Investment Committee, and was a former officer of the Northeast chapter of the Kansas Society of CPAs. Colleagues praised Denise for being focused, passionate, result-oriented leader with remarkable characteristics. Her vision and commitment are impressive and contagious. This morning, Denise will present Leadership is About Helping Others Achieve Their Greatest Potential. Let's welcome Denise back to campus. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for making the time to talk to me a few minutes this morning. I have to say that a little bit of how I ended up back in Topeka. I'm still working for Revlon. I'm still global head of global tax for Revlon. And I was living actually in Midtown when the pandemic hit, because our offices were right there on One New York Plaza. And as the pandemic went on, New York, I think, was the epicenter, and we felt it right away. And as social distancing took hold and continued to happen, I actually have asthma, and my husband became quite concerned. He didn't want to become a widow. And when you set up a hospital in Central Park, kind of freaks you out a little bit, right? That things are a little out of control. So we moved immediately to New Jersey, like 50 minutes from the city, hoping that this would eventually, be short-lived. And again, it didn't end up being that way. So as the company stayed remote, in May, we decided to come home. And actually, my husband drove me home because he didn't want me to get on an airplane. So we drove back from New York to here to home. And then since then, we actually have closed our location there in New York and have 2 storage facilities full of furnishings now. We're trying to, we figured out what's going to happen. The company has decided that we will be at least remote until the beginning of next year. And I think that as other companies, many companies are looking at hybrid models on how we're going to ever bring people back to an environment where you're very, very close. As you can imagine, space is at a premium in New York City. So it's not like you can easily have people 6 feet apart from each other. So I am hoping that this will resolve itself somehow, but from a work point of view, at least, it's quite normal. My life is continued very normal. I was explaining that as a global VP of global tax, my day starts very early because there's people around the world waking up somewhere that needs something. We have 130 corporations in the Revlon world, a very complex corporate structure. So there's lots to do, and it goes very late in the night because you always catch somebody late, either when they're waking up either in Australia or in China. So it has become, it continues to be a dynamic work environment, even though I'm working from home, but a much safer environment. And I'm very, very, very fortunate to be home. I feel like it's one of the blessings for me, at least from the pandemic, was be able to do this work remotely from here. It's something that I think corporations struggled with at first on how they would ever let someone have a global job like this remotely, but I think companies now have embraced. I am going to put my timer because I want to make sure that I don't speak for longer than I should, so that we can hear questions or any comments you guys have. I am going to share my screen, and I'm going to walk you guys through a little bit of my how did I develop a leadership point of view. I am going to skip, you're going to see some slides, don't worry, we're not going to go through everything that you see in detail because I could easily, to tell you my whole story, it would take quite a bit of time. So we're going to skip some of it, but let me share my screen and hopefully you all be able to see. Can everybody see my screen? Hopefully, I see the people nodding, that's good. Okay, so as you heard probably a little bit of the mention that I was actually born and raised in Brazil, but it's not such a straight line to the US, right? So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. I thought about it though, when I saw how many people were joining this meeting, it made me think about a story about my youngest son was in middle school here in Washburn Middle School. They had career day one day. And he asked, of course, my husband to go, because many of you might know my husband is a DEA agent, right? A Drug Enforcement Administration agent. At the time that my son was in middle school, he was the head of the high intensity drug trafficking team in the border with Mexico. And extremely interesting, talk for children, especially middle school, boys in middle school. So, but as my husband says, bad guys don't work 8 to 5, and he was on a big case, and something came up, and he was unable to be here. So I had to fill in for him. So here I am sitting in middle school, and the person before me in Nicholas's class was a police officer. And then the one after that was a firefighter. And then it was going to be me, right? I was head of tax for Hills at the time, and they introduced me, and you could see the kids going, oh, right, this is going to be really fun. And but I knew, having a kid at that age, I knew some of the motivators of that generation at that time. And I said to the kids, I said, kids, I absolutely cannot make it up for the excitement you will miss from not having my husband here, and make it up for all the great stories we just heard from our law enforcement community and our firefighters. But I can guarantee you guys, unfortunately, it's not that they don't deserve it, but I can guarantee you guys, I make way more money than they do. So let's if all of you now that want to get the latest iPods, the latest iPads, you might want to stay tuned. And it was funny because to this day, the kids said, oh yeah, I better pay attention then, right? Because I do want the latest computers and so on. Besides that, it has been a very, very rewarding career experience. And I've learned that life is really best lived in chapters. And the reason I say that, and I want to pause a little bit about that, is that I've learned that if you embrace the idea that your life will be chapters, you live your chapters to the fullest, and you don't regret any of your chapters, including the ones that might not end up so well. Because when you read a book, right, and the book has a chapter that is making you hang over there and trying to figure out what's going on, you don't want to go and relive that chapter, reread that chapter. You want to see what's going to happen. And as I've embraced that idea, my life has served me well, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the stories that really have really made me who I am and developed my leadership point of view that many people have. They're in this forum will be able to keep me honest because they have been part of this journey with me. So talk a little bit about roots, right? So how did my parents, my parents were Rosalia and Geraldo Antonio in Brazil, but they actually were not even from the same place in Brazil. My mother is from a place in Brazil called Bahia. A few interesting points about Bahia, right? For anybody that knows anything about Latin America, I think there's a few people in the forum that do. Bahia has the largest segregation of Africans outside of Africa, which is surprising to most people. And the other thing that's very interesting about Bahia is that the king of Portugal, when he was in Brazil, the emperor, he actually moved to Bahia. And he only wanted to have, that's where the court was, and he wanted to have good looking people in Bahia. So he would they literally would pick the best looking Africans, the best looking Portuguese, the best looking everybody to go to Bahia. And if you ever go to Bahia, you'll be impressed by how good looking the people there are. And my father, he was actually raised in Minas Gerais. He's Italian. My grandmother was pregnant with my father when she moved to Brazil. So he was born in Brazil, but she was full-blown Italian. And he was a farmer for many years. So these are two very different states in Brazil. So one of the interesting things is how did they meet? And I want to talk a little bit about that because it's how my Brazilian-American connection started, right? So in World War I, the American government got into an agreement with the Brazilian government under the Brazilian Accords for them to build a steel plant in Brazil. And they started in 1941 outside of the suburbs of Rio de Janeiro. And many people in Brazil migrated to that location, throughout the next few years as they built that very, very big plant that still exists today. And that's how my parents met. Both of them, of their families, moved to this area. And my father ended up working for the steel company, and he met my mother. And if you see a picture of my mother today, I know I'm going to age well because she's 87, and you still can recognize my mother fully from this picture. And they got married in 1958 in the city. And so that's where my roots started. So let's talk about how this idea that has been part of my life, that anything is possible, really has come about. And it has a lot to do with how I was of this first chapter of my life, right? And I think talking to anyone that has had children that's premature, I think it's a characteristics maybe of premature children. But I was born 2.5 months premature in Brazil. At the time, there was very little people could do when you had RH incompatibility between your parents, and my parents had that, and my mother should have not had more than 2 children, and she had 4, and I was the 4th one. So lots of complications by the time I was born. And really, I should not have made it was the whole idea, right? That there was not very much they knew what to do at the time for premature children, especially not in a third world country. And I wasn't born for a family that had, significant means. But I had one of the biggest points of my life, I think, has been I have a very, very smart mother. Even though she only had a 5th grade education, she used to get the Reader's Digest from someone that my uncle that was going to college at the time, or working for the big company. He worked for someone that was one of the American guys there, and he would bring home the Reader's Digest for my mom, the old Reader's Digest, and my mother would read the Reader's Digest, faithfully. And when I was born premature, and the doctors, sent me home with not much hope that I would make it, my mother had read that one of the biggest things about premature babies was body temperature, that the premature babies couldn't keep their body temperature. And I was so small that she wrapped me around her boobs, for many months. People didn't know that I was alive. And that is just one example of many to come. I have no doubt that I'm here, and I have benefited tremendously from the willingness of my mother to do things out of the box.
More frequent delivery, probably because there is enough.
To be able to do what she's done for me. I am not going to go through this entire line of journey, but one of the points is, I was quite sick throughout middle school, because even though I survived, I didn't get all the things that you do today for premature babies for your lungs to mature fully. So I had lots of respiratory problems for many years, and in a lot of times during that point, it was actually thought that I wasn't going to be able to develop also on a way to get ahead in school, because I missed so much school. But I was able to get through school, and through the huge sacrifices of my family, especially my mom, I went to a boarding school for girls in Brazil, a very good school, that she would do things for the school to be able to afford that, for us to be able to go to the school, me and my sister. And then when things were kind of normal in my family until my father passed away when I was 15 years old. He was passed away quite young from living hard and working hard. And that was also, it's one of those life-changing events. And I owe really a lot of to my parents, for my mom at the time and my oldest brother, for continuing to invest in my education so that I could finish my education. And I actually then passed the entry exam to go to the Brazilian public school, which is not an easy thing to do in Brazil either, right? But at the same time, because I had been sheltered quite a bit by living in a boarding environment with only girls, actually, my mother, and after my father passed away, my mother had each one of our kids got a very small inheritance, and we could do whatever we wanted with it. And at the time, what I wanted to do was to come to the U.S. So I decided that, okay, I'm going to take that investment, and I had enough funds to be able to buy a one-way ticket to the US and pay for 1 semester of school. And I was able to get a visa to come to school. And I looked at where should I go, and Brigham Young University at the time had the highest success rate in teaching English as a second language. And I didn't speak English at the time. So I took a one-way flight, and I came to Brigham Young University. And that's how come I that change, that one decision has changed so many lives. It's crazy to look back and think about it. And then one of the things that also I truly believe in, and you will see that has developed throughout this next chapter, is that you have to create the reality you want to live in. You know, you have to feel empowered to make changes in your life that some people sometimes think about it for many years and never do. You have to take that chance. So I made many life-changing decisions in my life, including coming to Utah and going to BYU. And while there are many things here that you can see, I want to focus on three things throughout this speech. One is, how did I ever come to Kansas, right? How did I ever get here? And that all by itself is an interesting story. I went to BYU. I actually lived in California too. You will see there's a degree here that I got from the Defense Language Institute. So I speak Russian. And when I was trying to think what we're going to do next, my first husband, his last name was Washburn, and he wanted to go to law school. And he had picked schools in San Diego. He had picked a school in, I remember, in somewhere else in California. And I said, well, what else is there? I mean, can we see what else is available? And he said, well, there's a school in Topeka, Kansas called Washburn University. And I said, that's destiny, because, you know, I think it was Dorothy. Dorothy said there was no place like home. So we packed our bags and we moved to Topeka. I had never been to Kansas or Topeka. And I also started my education then at Washburn. And I have to say, Washburn has been at the center of a lot of my successes going forward in my career. Many times when, even to this day, when people ask, where is Washburn University, I only have good things to say. And it has been the foundation for everything I've done professionally. And it has been somewhere that I always come back to. And I'm proud to say now, 2 of my children are alumni also, which is great, right? That the 2 of your kids go to your alma mater. So Washburn has been at the center of everything I've done. And I'm glad to be back part of the community again, and hopefully actively involved with the university. And then here in Topeka, like Professor Farley said, was where I started working then for Colgate and for Hills. And that career all by itself has been extremely rewarding. I had the ability to work for people that truly inspired me and made me think bigger dreams for myself, which is where I learned that. I mean, my interview with Rick Wankowski, who hired me at Washburn at Colgate, was, he said I could make my job as big as I wanted to be. And he lived that to the fullest, right? Because we grew that to a much bigger position than it was when I joined, and became a much more successful and able to give the company a lot of results from that. And then, as I said, chapters happen. I was very comfortable in my position, and I could have been there today, to this day. And it was difficult to think about doing something else because I loved my team. I know we're all friends to this day. I miss them, and it's great to stay in touch. But one of the things I read this book that says, what would you do if you were not afraid, from Susan, the Lean In book. And I thought, Colgate keeps asking me, do you want to go somewhere? Because I always said I wouldn't relocate. Then I decided, why not? I'll say yes. And to my surprise, they decided to send me to Brazil as a job that everybody at Colgate wants, which is to be head of finance over there at Colgate Brazil, to be the controller, because Colgate Brazil is a huge subsidiary for Colgate, as you can imagine, lots of oral care down there. And I really had never worked in Brazil, right? I left when I was 18, 19, and it really was like going back to a foreign country. I was in Brazil and I was not a Brazilian at all. And it was an amazing experience. And I learned that saying yes sometimes is the right chapter, right? Just say yes to many opportunities. And I went to Brazil. I was able to actually do a global leadership program that Colgate put me through with Tux University. And I missed Dr. Farley when he went to Brazil because I was actually in Japan on one of those trips. But what a great experience to be able to see the world and see the world from a leadership point of view. Very life-changing. And I learned some strategies that have become part of my life. Some of the people in this talk are probably recognizing the 3-box thinking. And really, I learned to enjoy the journey and get out of your comfort zone, even when you don't have to, right? I didn't have to, but it was very, very rewarding. And I have a legacy now, and I've learned that redefining success, it's part of what my leadership journey is, right? Success can't be just about a paycheck, and it can't be just about titles. It has to be about the legacy you will leave behind and the people's lives that you help, and how people can transform their lives by working with you and through your experiences. How can you help them feel empowered? That really, it's something that I enjoy. So to end, I would say that dreaming a bigger dream for yourself is part of something that I've experienced, that I've tried to help others experience. And it's better than money when you see that light bulb go off on people's eyes, that they feel empowered and that they can really use what they're learning. Yes, and we're doing corporate taxation, we are doing reorganizations, we're doing principal organizations around the world, but it means something, right? It means jobs that's being saved, it means paychecks for people that have a job, it means manufacturing jobs, it means many things. It does mean something. And if you can figure out what that is, it really gives you a lot of satisfaction. And so leading, helping in others to really achieve their greatest potentials is something that I really get a lot of reward from, and it's bigger than a paycheck for me, for sure, at this point in my career. So I wanted to end by playing like 15 seconds of a video, and then we can talk about some questions.
So leadership for me is when I can draw my own passion, to help others to achieve their goals.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. I stopped sharing. Okay, thank you so much. I hope you guys could endure. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Or to say hello. Please say hello. I don't know everybody that's here, but if you are here and I know you, please say hello.
I just want to say thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.
And Denise, if you don't mind answering a kind of a more business oriented rather than a fine job that you did with leadership, do the large international companies, do they have sort of a primary tax home that they kind of go to do things that need to be done, or do you have to learn tax law in every single country that you're in?
Yeah, so what you find after you do global taxation for a while, there's some common themes everywhere you go globally. And then you have to, absolutely, you have to have a global partner. And you usually go to one of the big four, big four, KPMG, PwC, Deloitte and Touche. They have offices everywhere. Usually you partner with one of them. But you have to know, if you go to them for everything, you don't have enough dollars, right? They're not necessarily the cheapest place to go for advice. So you find after you do this for a while that there is some common themes that you can depend on. I mean, I went to Brazil and I thought I knew taxation until I went to Brazil. Brazil has a completely different form of taxation. But at the same time, there was some common themes that we could that I could use as a foundation to build on. And we did a huge, many big transformations in Brazil in the tax area when I was there. And when I first started, many of the things we were doing were completely foreign to me. But because there is this common theme, we were able to use that to get started. And then I had a great team, and we were able to, make amazing changes there too. So it is never boring. That's what I have to say. You always have something happening somewhere that you have to attend to.
Good, thank you.
Denise, I was wondering about working from home. Do you see that as something that's going to last after
Yeah,
COVID?
I do think it's something that's going to last. It's not going to abolish offices, but I think it's making companies ask themselves who really needs to be in the office and who can benefit from being in the office. And one of the things that I think is at certain points in your career, working from home will make no difference. Like, I'm glad that this is happening to me now at this point that I am in my career. I think if I was at a younger point in my career, it would have been very detrimental to my career, not to have been able to learn and be able to be there to understand how the corporate world works, to learn from people that are next to you. My office used to be I always had people standing in line in front of my office to come and talk to me. I've always been very active, involved with people in the office, helping them and so on. So I think of all the people, I would have never been able to help if I was not in the office. So I think at different points in your career, I think this can be extremely detrimental. At the point that I'm in today, I think I am hoping that it will be something that will last for a while, for me at least, on the pandemic, as I have asthma. I don't want to go back to an office and be exposed to people. And I am very effective working remotely at this point in my career. But I think there'll be a hybrid model. I think companies are going to come back in some kind of a hybrid way to figure out how do they keep their culture, keep the interactions with the younger generation, and yet, don't have as many people in the office that could get infected and spread the pandemic. Yeah. But my day starts very early and goes up very late because I'm a global director, so a global VP. So, it's 14, 15 hours a day, easy. Yeah.
Denise, could I ask you more of a domestic question?
Sure.
One of my students asked this, and I didn't have a good answer, though I know it affects a lot of people, but we've got a lot of people that are working in different locations and have a different nexus today. Are the big corporations, and I know how the state taxing authorities are all trying to find tax money, are they trying to keep track of when they work out of state, so you know whose state gets to tax you, as opposed to, are the corporations putting much effort into chasing those people down? I have a daughter from Texas who's living in our house right now too, and I asked her that, and she didn't give me a very good answer.
I think there is the short-term answer and the long-term answer, right? I think many states are going to have some kind of forgiveness for the pandemic, what they call the pandemic. And if you go to some states, they already have issued some notifications. They're not going to try to tax anyone that's doing that. I think that's in the short term, but I think there is going to be a long-term component to this. And I think that's where I think corporations are, as the one that I'm working with, are looking at what will be the impact and how we're going to handle it, because there'll be a hybrid model of some sort. And I think it's a matter of, you're going to have to embrace. I think some things have happened, Jim, like with Wayfair, for example, that has broadened some nexus issues that we were used to be much more concerned about. If you have an employee in a state and you're a multinational company, okay, maybe you have to file a return, but do you really have a lot of expense or tax liability when you apportion all your income, if you apportion it based on sales or one payroll? So it's not going to be significant enough to stop change. I think it's going to create, you have to be very aware. And also, I think especially as an employer, I think you need to be aware, what is your responsibility to the states that your employees are living in, right? What is your responsibility as the employer? I think we're going to have to be very aware of that as this continues. Yeah.
Thank you. I can see Jeannie nodding along with you during that.
Denise, thanks for your inspiring talk. I just wanted to know, what was the biggest change for you going from Colgate to Revlon? What was the biggest learning curve for you?
I would say people don't buy as much lipstick during the pandemic as they do toothpaste and toothbrush. So hopefully, the whole mask thing, can think about it, right? How many people are buying cosmetics as much as they used to? So I think that is definitely a new normal. I think that is one big difference. The other big difference is, it's a premium product. It's very different from working in the basics, right? When you work with toothpaste, toothbrush, soap, personal care, or Dish soap, it's a very different market than it is dealing with premium products. So it has been very interesting for me. I mean, I don't know if you guys know that Revlon owns Elizabeth Arden. So we own many brands like American Crew that I didn't know, Mitchum. So it's to me, it's very interesting to see how, I mean, how do you even make lipstick, right? I had no idea. So it was very interesting to learn how they make lipstick. And it's a much more premium product and not necessarily as volume. You know, Colgate really dealt with a lot of volume. So to me, that has been a big, interesting difference because we have a lot of corporations that sell as much as Hills did, but we sell a lot of premium products, smaller quantities, which then creates all the complexities for corporations, right? Because you need to make enough economies of scale to be able to still be profitable, not necessarily because you have the quantity, but because you have the premium. So that has been very interesting for me to understand. Yeah.
Good point.
Denise, I have a question about the markets around the world. What are some of your biggest markets, you know, for your products? And also, how are they priced? What is the pricing, and are they different from country to country?
Yeah. So one of our biggest markets is really, I would say China is a big one. So China is a big one. I would say Europe, several places in Europe are pretty big also. The US, it depends on the product, right? US is less cosmetic driven, but especially Elizabeth Arden is pretty big outside of the US and pretty big in Asia. Yes, our prices are dependent on the market. And as you can imagine, there's duties involved, you know, transportation. It's not the same as producing. Our biggest producer is in Oxford. We have a big plant in Oxford and one in Roanoke in the US. And it's not so close to some of our markets, right? So to get things there, and then this whole discussion with the Trump administration and China always being at odds with each other and tariffs, it's not necessarily good for products that are very high costing products that you produce in the US. We don't produce outside of the US. So all our products then have tariffs as they travel abroad. So that's something that we always trying to be very conscious and close to, because, you know, that's a cost you can recover, right? So you need to make sure that then you have to make it up somehow. So yeah, we produce mainly in Oxford in the US. So that's one of our main plant locations. Yeah. So if you're one of my friends, I need to see who is here, right? I need to make sure that I say hello to some people. Galen, are you here? Galen, are you here? Yeah, I see Galen. Nice.
Yes, Denise, I'm here.
Hi, good to see you, my friend. So Galen was my first journey started at Hills. Galen and I were together. So good to see a voice from Galen. Yeah.
I can attest to Denise's leadership skills. I think she helped me grow quite a bit in that position.
We had a great time, didn't we, Galen? Yeah.
Yes, we
I see
did.
Candace. Yeah. Yeah, some of my good friends from that time are here. It's good. And I see Dr. Masachek. I should tell a story of Dr. Masachek's course, my cost accounting course from Dr. Masachek. I went to Brazil and I hadn't done cost accounting since I did your class. And I was in charge. The entire plant was in all the cost accounting in Brazil. They have the largest Colgate oral care and personal care plants are in Brazil. And they were under my responsibility, the controller there. And I took your book, the book from that class. Still, I took my book to Brazil and I used that book. And I was teaching people cost accounting in Brazil using your book. So I thought of you. I thought Dr. Masachek probably would never believe that I still have this book.
Well, Denise, that's so wonderful. It's so good to hear you. I actually remember all of you. I remember Denise. I remember exactly what room we sat in and where you sat in the room. And she was a great student, always asked such amazing questions. You always pushed us to be better. And you're still doing that your whole life. It's so good to see you. Congratulations on all your success.
So I learned enough in your class to hold me back, 20 years later. So I have to tell you, man, I was pretty good.
That's a compliment. Thank you so much, Denise.
Really good. Yeah, thank you. I think
Any
Sarah's
other
here.
questions? Oh, go ahead, Denise.
No, I was just gonna say, I saw Sarah. Sarah was from Brazil also. She was here. Yeah, I saw Sarah.
Yeah, I'm still here. And I'm a proof of your leadership too. And all I can see in your presentation is so nice to remember all the experience and all everything that I learned from you, and how can I share this with my team today. So it's great to hear from you. And yes, I'm a proof of your leadership and how you could change things with that. So thank you very much.
Oh, nice to hear from you, Sarah. So we need to get Sarah to a master's degree, Dr. Farley, for an MBA at Washburn. Yeah.
I'll
She's
call
the
you
head of
this
tax now for Colgate Brazil. Yeah.
I'll call you this afternoon, Sarah.
Great.
I've got a dean that's right next to you on this screen that
Yeah,
we'll
I
have
told
something for you.
Sarah's the future. I said, Sarah, I need to get an MBA. Yeah.
True. I'll get there.
We can have her admitted by 5 o'clock, I'm sure. So
Sounds
Thank
good to
you.
me. Yeah. Any other questions? If not, I won't put you guys through any more suffering. I mean, tax at 10 a.m. in the morning on a Thursday, right? You have to be an act of love. But I have to say, one of the things I would end with is that as you touch students or you touch anyone, like, now with my children, I'm so glad that they went to Washburn. I think one of the things that it's been great for me is to be able to help them see the possibilities that Washburn could bring. All my children that have gone to Washburn have benefited from there. And as I've gone around the world and people will look at my resume and they think, they expect to see, or they think they will see Yale or Harvard. And I say, no, I went to a school that's better than that. I went to Washburn University and I learned a lot, right? I wasn't just one of many. I actually learned a lot. And one of the things that I think really sets Washburn apart was that, right? What I just said to Dr. Mazachek, it wasn't just a compliment, it's the truth. I learned many things at Washburn that even years later in my career, as I deal with big issues, I always go back to the basics. And a lot of the basics that I learned at Washburn serve me well to this day. So I think we can teach that to our children and our next generation, all the students that are there, that really learn what you're doing here, because it will be what will ground you going forward. Even if you get other degrees, this will be it. This will be the where you're going to go back to and depend on. So I think that's a great message to give them with real example. So.
Roger Underwood, did you have a question for Denise?
I was just going to say hello, Denise. I'm so glad to hear that you're back in Topeka.
Yep.
It's good to hear your voice and see your face.
Yeah. Maybe we need to connect with I need to get connected with my Rotary Club. Maybe they'll let me back in.
Oh, I think we probably will.
I'll invite you, Denise.
Okay, do that, please. Hi, Candace.
Hello.
Good to see you, my dear. So yeah, please, somebody needs to invite me back, right? Maybe I can go back to Rotary now. Yeah, that's good. How are things at Hughes?
Good. Working from home, obviously. You can see my office.
So I am with my dog. My dog is here. Of course, Ping is here with me. And I always say Hills will always be my first love, right? Always will be. Like, you never forget your first love. No matter where I go, yes, I like lipstick. I loved working with Colgate in Brazil, but Hills will always be my first love. Even in Brazil, I was very involved with Hills. Hills will always be a special place for me. Yep.
Hey, Denise, it's David. I remember you were instrumental in kind of keeping a pipeline of interns and new workers for Hills coming from the School of Business and mentoring them, and many of them leaving, going on and having very successful careers. And then a few years ago, Hills kind of changed Colgate kind of changed the finance function a little bit, and we lost some of that ability to do that in Topeka with Hills. But Dr. Stoika has worked a lot with Jasper, and we now work a lot on marketing projects and those type of projects. And in fact, Dr. Stoika has developed a program where we have a school in Belgium, a school in China, and now a school in Brazil working together on projects. So we continue to work with Hills, maybe not in the tax function as much as we used to, but in the other areas. And we think they're a very, very good and important company here in Topeka. So
So we should have one day we should have a put together with our old interns. So one of our interns, Brandy, I mean, she's now Senior Director of International Taxes at PwC. She and I actually got together when I was in New York, and we were all talking about Washburn. She was one of my Washburn interns. Another one is head of China desk, the China desk for KPMG or PwC, I don't remember which one now, in San Jose, in California. And it's just amazing. I've gotten some amazing letters from them over the years, and we stay connected. And I think we all talk about, right? We all started at Washburn and working in down the street in Topeka, and now we meet around the world as we stay connected through LinkedIn or something. That has been really, really, really cool. Yeah, we should get Brandy to be a speaker. That would be awesome. Brandy Mann. Yeah.
I'll make note of her name. Brandy Mann.
She's back in New York now. She was in London at with PwC. Now she's head of international desk in New York. Yeah.
Well, these are the kind of stories of, you know, the interns and working with you. I mean, these are the types of things that make Washburn special. I know that probably other universities have similar stories, but nevertheless, just the makeup of our campus, our students, our alumni, administration, what have you. I mean, this is a special place that you really make some lifelong connections, and you know, it's an important resource in helping you further your career over the years. And it is a very special place, and many times it's difficult to put that into words. And so when we hear stories like this, it just validates, you know, all the good work that we're doing here on campus, and we appreciate that very much. Any other questions for Denise before we wrap this up for the morning? One great thing about doing this virtually is we probably should have titled this "Wake Up Later with Washburn" instead of being here at 7:30. At 10 a.m. start time is your eyes are open a little bit more at 10 o'clock than 7:30. But anyhow, I mean, for our first go at a virtual Wake Up with Washburn, I'm extremely pleased, and we had great turnout today, and I appreciate everybody taking an hour out of their
Thank you everyone
with us
for coming.
Yes. And we'll have another one in November. We'll no doubt be virtual like this, and we'll keep you posted once we line up our speaker, and hope to see you back here again soon. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and
Thank you.
healthy. Thank you so much. Have a great day.